kind of a big item. I expect to have quite a bit of discussion about that. I'm bringing the PowerPoint up right now. This is somewhat the culmination of our financing effort that we've embarked on and been going through for the last several months. We've got a couple of important items to do. The most important is to adopt a resolution and authorize the chairman and myself to execute documentation that would be required to facilitate the lease purchase financing. We have staff here from Government Financial Strategies, and they are going to present the results of the financing and answer any other questions. I had a request from one of the supervisors to give a brief overview of the structure of the financing, and I think I'll try to do that first. So what we, as the board is aware, we were given direction to seek a financing project to do three things. One, to provide a contribution to the Honey Lake Valley Joint Powers Authority, the Honey Lake Valley Recreational Authority, for the construction of a pool, $1.1 million. That is one important component of this financing. The second is the acquisition of a property on Riverside Drive or nearby there for the purpose of headquartering many of the departments that would be better served to be located closer to the courthouse, the district attorney, public defender, child support services, and maybe a few other departments. That, and then we've also got an amount of money proposed to be used to remodel and upgrade the courthouse and the courthouse annex to facilitate the transition of the departments from this building over to that building, and basically vacating this building. That would include planning, road department, and others. So the structure of the financing is a traditional lease purchase borrowing of approximately $4.1 million to accommodate those actions. The way the financing structure is proposed is through the Lassen County Public Improvement Corporation, which is a corporation that's been utilized to finance projects in the past, including the construction of the county jail in 1989. In that case, it was a certificate of participation lease financing, which is slightly different than the lease financing that we're considering today, but with all of the same major components, whereby the corporation, the county would lease to the corporation certain assets, in that case being the juvenile hall, on a long-term lease. The corporation would then use that leasehold interest as collateral to borrow money in the form of the lease purchase. They would provide that money back to the county, and then the county would lease back through annual lease payments to the corporation for those facilities, and the corporation would then use that lease payment to retire the debt. I think I got that right. And that's the basic structure of the transaction. I'm here to answer questions, as is Government Financial Strategies.
You want to introduce our lawyer?
Please, anything. Mr. Shaw's been working on this project as well.
I'm Stacey Frericks. I'm with Government Financial Strategies. Lori Ranieri, who spoke to last time we presented, apologizes that she can't be here today. She had another county board meeting to attend that has been on our schedule for months. So I'm here to answer any questions or share any information.
Now, this corporation, this is nothing new. This is how we did the jail back 20-some years ago.
1989.
Yeah, 25 years ago. So we're not reinventing a wheel here or anything.
And my experience is limited, but I think this is a very traditional method of doing county financing.
Yeah. Many public entities have their own financing corporation. And since there was one already existing, that was what was chosen for this one. But this is the way to get that lease structure into the financing, and it's the traditional way for government entities to borrow money in California.
And it's done throughout the state?
Yes.
This one?
Throughout the state.
So-
Well, every lease purchase in COP, or certificates of participation in the state of California, uses a financing corporation.
Who's in this home for?
Sometimes it's their own, sometimes they rent one.
Okay. Did you want to go through this?
Sure.
Slideshow, whatever you call it.
Let me, go ahead and I'll pull that up while you're.
Is that something you want to go through? That might answer a lot of questions.
The slideshow was what was presented last time.
Oh, okay. So we've already had it. So
If you had, I'm happy to answer questions on any of the slides here.
It's no different than what you have out.
It is no different.
We do have a copy in our packet.
Right.
Yeah, and the one thing that has happened from there, you authorized a competitive process to get bids.
Right.
And we did receive numerous bids, and one was selected, one that actually matched what you were looking for as far as debt service payments and total dollars borrowed. And then within the lease purchase structure, which has less ongoing administrative duties for the county. So all of those fit, and we went with that one in consultation with staff, and we did hear Friday night that the credit was approved, and they are ready to close and deliver the money June 4th.
And that's even sooner. We were talking about the end of June, so now that's what it's fast.
And if I could just point out for Supervisor Hempel's benefit, we evaluated utilizing the existing Public Improvement Corporation versus renting one, and the difference is our cost for having our own is about $800 a year versus about $3,000 a year for renting one. So that's simply why we made the decision.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question from the public. Jim, back here, if you come up and state your name correctly.
Yes. Jim Hodge, I'm on District 1, Susanville.
That's
So-
good.
Yeah. No,
You have to be, you have to be.
yeah. So my question would be, if you're saying it's a regular thing that goes on with corporations. So why don't the counties do it as opposed to corporations?
Why don't the counties do what?
Do it directly as opposed to a corporation? Why do they use the corporation?
The case law in California, in order to borrow money this way, dictates having a corporation that can be the pass-through to hold that property in collateral and then lease it back to the county. There would be no mechanism to lease it back to the county if it wasn't another corporation.
The county can't lease itself back to itself directly, so it creates this straw man who becomes the owner that then leases it back.
Right.
The straw man is, in essence, the county in terms of who serves on that board with these elected.
And so is that true if you outright buy it as opposed to lease it?
The leasing component of this doesn't have anything to do with the property that we're acquiring. We are, in fact, acquiring it, purchasing it, as opposed to leasing it. The lease is, we're leasing the juvenile hall to the corporation. Corporation's using it for collateral, getting the bonds, we're repaying it back. The county is contemplating purchasing property on Riverside Drive, not leasing.
Okay. And so what's the expected amount of that building at this time, the Riverside building? And or renovations?
I believe it was 1.6 million, is that
But
right?
what we presented, I don't know,
Including the renovation.
166, so you have it right there.
it's on our, yeah. So in page 5 of the PowerPoint, if you had the staff report, the office space and acquisition was
1.7.
total 1.7. That was a 1.1 million for acquisition and 600,000 for
Okay. How active is this corporation? Who's on it? Who gets to make the decisions?
It's only active when there's a financing. We haven't had any debt for several years, so it's been inactive since I think 2007 or 8.
After the jail was paid off.
Right.
We had a ban for the jail, and the jail was paid off, then it become inactive.
Okay.
Now it's going to become active again on this new venture.
So and the bylaws dictate who the directors are. bylaws of that corporation is the chairman of the board of supervisors, county administrative officer, and other elected officials as directors.
Okay. So is it dictated how often you meet once this becomes active?
Annually.
Are you people paid, or
No.
are there events? Do you have public meetings?
We have one public meeting per year.
Okay. And then what about the
There are
GPA?
minutes, Jim.
Pardon me?
There are minutes. We talked about that a little bit earlier.
There are, the pool, how does the pool, the JPA interface with this corporation?
It doesn't.
It does. So what about the money that comes from this portion of the loan, the 4.1 million or whatever, the 1.1 million that goes to the pool? How is that structured differently than the rest of this?
It's not structured differently. The county is borrowing approximately between $4 million and $4.1 million. County is going to take 1.1 million of that and make it as a contribution to the Joint Powers Authority.
Okay, so it's not part of the corporation business? No.
The agreement the county has with the JPA or the JPA has with the county is totally separate from any sort of financing. I mean, the county can make the contribution to the JPA just using existing dollar resources, and that was what the original intent was. But staff has brought to the board the idea that money is relatively cheap out on the market, so rather than depleting our cash reserves, it makes sense to utilize these cheap dollars that you can basically buy, and this is the mechanism to do that. And the idea is, rather than doing it for one project or that project, bundling several projects and commitments and needs the county has identified as being there. And one of them that was included was, so this blending the JPA with the county financing, they're two separate things.
Okay. So the next question, we're borrowing this 4.1 million now, and the jail probably needs 2.5 million's worth of improvements. Will that just come out of current cash flow?
Without confirming your dollar amounts, we don't have a real solid dollar amount. But certainly there are improvements at the jail that will need to be done over the
There's
next several
the
years.
ADA stuff, the kitchen, there's quite a list.
Right, there is a list.
Yeah.
Not all that's going to be done today or this year.
We have on the agenda today the control system, and that's being funded out of.
I know about that already, and that's kind of already a done deal. It's just, I'm trying to look at the immediate future, the other significant amounts of money that we have outgoing.
And that's a good question, Jim, great question, but I think, that's gonna be looked at in the budget.
Yeah, and there are several sources. To answer your
There
question,
are many different sources for our sheriff and John to bring money from to do updates on kitchen, like the control panel. I mean, that's not coming out of the general fund.
And the choice we wind up making in the budgetary process, so, if we were to go buy the Riverside building or give the money for the pool or do other improvements in other departments, those dollars are all being competed for. So by doing the financing for these 3-4 big items leaves the regular budget pretty much alone that can not hopefully, but ideally will be used to satisfy those other needs as you've indicated.
okay. In regard to the jail in particularly, there are several sources. There's the Community Corrections Partnership as a building fund, as a fund balance that has been growing over the last few years. We have an accumulated capital outlay fund. And
That's about $500,000
like
a year.
Supervisor Chapman said, those projects are going to compete with all the projects that we need to do. But as far as it being one or the other, I don't view it that way.
No.
I wasn't meaning there was one or another. It's more like, there's more significant outgoings going to happen in the near future. What we're talking about here. So that's
Something I want to bring up, Jim, and I don't have the numbers, but there is going to be a revenue savings by other buildings we have leased that we will no longer have to pay leases on, that we will give up, because those people will be moved into this building. And maybe, I don't know if staff has a number on that.
I can speak to that a little bit without having a great deal of detail, but for example, the child support services is currently leasing a facility, and the number that comes to mind is $7,800 a month, I believe, on their lease. Now, they are going to move into this building. Child Support Services is a state-funded program, so we will be claiming back from the state their share of that building that they're going to be occupying. So instead of paying rent to a private party, they're essentially going to be paying rent to the county, which can be used, age or retire, the debt or maintenance, what have you. One of the recent topics we've begun discussing is the county has a need for a day reporting center for the CCP. Don't have a location for that yet. If it turns out that we have enough room in this facility, and that that's a logical location, those are a lot of ifs, I'll grant you, then there would be funds that have been set aside in the CCP budget that may be utilized to either repay the loan or use for maintenance or contribute to the county.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Good questions, and I learned from all of them. So, anybody else wish to ask questions on the body of the board?
I have some questions.
Go ahead, Mr. Supervisor.
What if the pool doesn't go?
We have
We already got a hole in the ground.
So,
Don't worry, that 1.1 million could get spent at.
I know.
don't think for a minute we haven't contemplated that, because
Sure.
the key to the pool at this point, or the key to the funding of the pool, is the city coming up with their half. And as the board's aware, we will only put our money in at such time as the city has their money. And if they fail to get it, or for whatever reason choose not to contribute it, then we will still have borrowed the money. We will still have it in our treasury.
We have two choices. We either could use that money to pay off the debt early, or we could reallocate it to some other project that may be of need out there. So either one of those two options, the money's not going to go to waste.
So I get that, but I guess my question is if the pool doesn't go, is it necessary that we borrow the whole 4.1 million?
Is it necessary? No.
Okay, but is our intention on borrowing the full
We will,
amount?
absolutely. We will have borrowed the money probably by the time the city has confirmation.
And I get that there's enough need there for that.
And it could always go to paid debt service and pay down the loan.
Okay,
So-
and that was my next question.
Yeah.
Pay down the loan early.
Okay, okay.
And my question, I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
You brought, do you, once this loan is signed, we start paying interest on the entire loan, or do we only pay interest as we use it?
Yeah, we'll draw down the full amount when we.
When the money is received, the debt service schedule is set.
It's not like a line of credit.
No. Okay.
We had hoped that the city would be farther along than they are. In fact, we hurried up to get this done.
I know.
We didn't want to be the ones holding up the project, and now it looks like maybe the city's probably looking at August or so to have their funds in place.
Well, they're playing nebulous. It could be August, but it could be July. It's a question.
Okay.
They were kind of just taking their mosey time because they thought the county was going to not be available until later on. But now they realize, and I think we were talking about the end of June, and now when you tell them June 4th, it really lights the fire into them. So the pressure's going to be on them to speed their process up, not delay it.
Well, we had targeted to have it done this fiscal year, and we're on target.
Yeah, well, they forgot the ability of you to make things happen.
Thank you. I got that on the video.
That is why we hired Mr. Egan.
So
Okay.
what's the time frame where we are going to give the city to come up with their what do you do, 6 months, 3 months, a year?
I can tell you right now, the city reps on the full board are already got the blow torches going, and they're talking about July 1, not September 1. So I don't think it's going to be. I mean, obviously, we're going to know where they're at no later than probably the end of August, if that becomes the reality. So we're in a very short time frame.
Jim, the work is being done now, and I go by it all the time. They got to go by it to go up to Ramsey Ditch, check the water and all that. So
That was,
Is that gonna stop now until the city?
no, the work is complete for the demolition of the site. So the site's now, except for the removal of the last of the propane tanks, the site's basically ready to go. And that's why I know the pool board, in terms of dealing with city administration, is this thing is not going to grow any moss. We want this thing going in. The target is to really be in a, we're looking at going to bid, releasing bids. We can't release the bids till the money's in the bank. So sometime between July 1 and August 31, that, the ideal is that money is going to be there, and we're going to be releasing for bid with the idea that construction would start as early as later this fall.
Thank you. Richard?
I have a couple.
I was just going to point out that the work that's been done to date has been with contributions that the city and county already made.
Yeah.
Good enough.
And there'll be another contribution made by the city and the county come July 1 of the 200,000. So the 1.1 million is above and beyond that third payment that would be made.
Okay, Mr. How many else?
Who is exactly going in the new building? I've heard a lot of
The
proposals, but.
Yes, the current plan is child support services,
Okay.
public
Slow,
defender,
slow. Okay.
district attorney. Those are the very certain ones.
Right.
Less certain, but pretty certain, would be adult probation and room allowing possibly a day reporting center. But that's very early on in the discussion stages.
I get that this is a floating thing, but I kind of like to have an idea of what you're thinking.
I think we're looking at people that are needed to go to the courthouse.
Okay.
We should say the new state courthouse.
The Hall of Justice.
Yeah, Hall of Justice.
There's much confusion about where the courthouse is.
All of them, okay, that's better. Thank
And as we talked about earlier, I'd really like to see utility savings, and I'd really like that transparent so everybody in this room knows what money.
Yeah, operationally, we should gain a lot of efficiency.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And I'd like that almost narrowed down to per building, so we can just say, oh,
Okay.
okay.
We can work on that. Certainly, we will be saving money, efficiency in terms of heating, et cetera, like that. I think that will pale in comparison to what we will be gaining and saving in our workflow efficiency.
Okay.
When I look at it,
Okay.
the heating bill isn't as much of a factor as having those people close together doing their job. And having people out of here.
Out of this building?
Yeah, driving to
Also.
work, right.
Okay, any more questions?
No, not right.
Okay, Ms. Spencer, you have a question?
I have just a quick question. This is going to fund rather soon. Does this just get dumped into the general fund, or are we going to have a line item, an account
We'll
number?
set up a special fund.
There'll be a special fund that is listed as a project, special projects. I don't know what
Yeah,
you're going to call
it'll
it.
be the projects fund.
Yeah, I'd like a really definitive line item so people that look at the budget can see and track that particular project. It doesn't have to be innocuous, because that worries people sometimes. If you could have the budget item
The auditor and
absolutely identified.
the auditor and treasurer and I have discussed a separate fund, and depending on the auditor's preferences, perhaps 3 budget units within that fund for the 3 different projects.
That would be really nice.
Yeah, it will be set up like that very good. I mean, I don't know if you have anything to add to it.
Now, Richard covered our discussion.
Okay, did that answer your question, Spencer?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. McKean?
I don't have a question, but I'd like to make a statement.
You bet.
Is this
Come
the
to
time?
the podium and make a statement at the podium, have a second poll to the supervisors back to
Well, it's a little time to get out of here. We'll keep going.
I don't think I'll be looking back too much either.
It seems like this is a foregone conclusion that I have a real problem with this county going into this much debt at this time in the world. The philosophy of borrowing, it's no problem in borrowing money. If you're borrowing money so that you can provide a facility that the people that use it pay for it. That you're borrowing money for existing facilities that we already have. Maybe they're not the greatest in the world, that's for sure. But in order to build new facilities when there's no new need. The money for these projects should have been set aside in the past. You haven't been able to do it. What makes you think you can set aside that same amount of money in the future to pay this loan off? I think that's very, very important. We have a declining population, and we don't have any new needs. These are needs that have existed for quite some time. And I blame myself for my responsibility when I was on the board of not putting enough money back into the till so that we could pay for this on a pay-as-you-go basis. They're proposing to use the tobacco receipts as part of the repayment method. Those tobacco receipts are being used for other things now. How is that going to be replaced? And I can recall when we first got the tobacco receipts, it was quite a fight over how we're going to spend them. A lot of the money was used for the one-stops, and I voted to agree with the one-stop funding for the Big Valley area because that's the way I got Brian's vote to vote for allocating all the other tobacco funds for its funding are unfunded liabilities. Those liabilities are still there. We haven't paid them off. We don't have any money for them. So this would be a real problem, particularly if the tobacco receipts goes down, as they're forecast to do. The facility should be paid for by the people that use it. The people that use it are the same people that are here now. We should be paying for it, and we should have been putting money aside in the past. But you're asking future taxpayers to pay for this. We don't have any new future taxpayers. Taxpayers we're going to have 5 years from now are probably about the same ones we have now. How do you think they can pay for that when we haven't been able to pay for it in the past? I know everybody wants to be in a new building with all the modern technology and so forth, but we really don't need improved facilities. Their locations aren't ideal, but that to be handled in other ways on a pay-as-you-go basis. It boils down to, in my opinion, you don't buy something you can't afford. We've proven that we can't afford it because we haven't put money aside for it in the past. Lassen has been good in not borrowing money in the past. I beg you to be conservative and don't spend something you don't have. We don't need to borrow $4.1 million all at once. We are too poor for it, to be perfectly honest. And I think there's another factor here that I hope the board will consider. Some of you were on the board when the recession of 2009 hit. Budgets were tight. A lot of employees had to be laid off. It's not that much better now. The national press points up, yeah, we've got this great recovery. The people don't see it. There isn't any recovery. And we're on borrowed time for the next recession to hit. What are you going to do when your receipts go down significantly, like they would if another recession hit? I just beg you, please don't borrow money.
Thank you, Herbert. Anybody else have any questions? Iona McCain?
I am McCain here. My concern is you're tying this board up financially for the next 15 years. There's two of you that won't be here to help carry that responsibility on. Yeah. And I think by indebting the future board is something that we should really consider. Thank you. You know, I would like a Lamborghini, you know, and instead of my little Lexus, and I'd like to have a Palace, but I can't afford it.
Thank you. Any specific questions from anybody? Board? Any back to the board? Any more questions from the board?
I have a question, Richard. So on this agreement here, you're going with the 15-year, not the 10-year?
Well, it's 20 year.
It's a 20-year.
If you look at page 10 of the packet,
Where'd you,
It's the first one, of the terms that are before you.
So it's one on the far left.
Yes, the Southwest Security, the Western Alliance Public Finance.
My other question is now,